Not too long ago, Mojang held the Minecraft Live event of 2024, announcing the two updates coming to Minecraft for this year, or drops as they call it. The Bundles of Bravery, which was released just a few days ago, and their winter drop that brings with it the Pale Garden. Imagine draining the vibrant colors from a biome with nothing to find other than giant trees, grey vegetation, and clouded skies. It really gives off the vibe of a dead biome, but it's during the night that things change. The once empty forest now becomes inhabited by its new hostile mob, the Creaking, a wood-like creature with overgrowth on its limbs, glowing eyes, and sluggish movement when you aren't looking. But what is the Creaking exactly? Why is it only found in the Pale Garden, and does it have anything to do with the ancient builders? Again. But after this, you might be shocked by what the Creaking is hiding. Also, stick around till the end for a very special announcement. Without a furthermore, I present to you the Creaking Theory. Before we get into the topic of the Creaking, let's begin with where you can find it, the Pale Garden. The first part of its name definitely refers to the biome's color scheme, with different shades of white and grey, instead of the usual bright colors you might encounter in other biomes. Then you have the garden part of the name, which I think points to the peaceful and yet silent atmosphere the biome gives off, or it could be interpreted as something growing within it, which could be referring to the Creaking's heart. Again, more about it in a minute. At first look, you would assume the Pale Garden is a dying or decaying forest due to how quiet the place is, and the lack of mobs spawning during the daytime. You can't help think it's abandoned, but we know that can't be the case since the grass in the Pale Garden isn't actually dead, as it can spread and grows through dirt. Another fact to take into consideration, moss. According to a research made by the University of New South Wales, have shown that abundance of moss in a habitat could be assigned to it being healthy, as plentiful growth of moss, especially near other plant roots, have shown a significant increase in nutrient cycling, helping plants gain even more nutrients. The pale oak tree sapling design are also a proof of the Pale Garden being native to the overworld, as they look similar to their grown counterparts. I mean, if it was really a decaying biome, then why would a rotting tree sap still grow to become a bigger decomposing plant? But still, something doesn't add up. Despite the heavy vegetation, you would at least expect some animals to live in the biome, yet there is none. And you can't ignore the sudden change in the sky, from its bright blue color to a gray unsettling shade. But it's not only you who finds it troubling, the villagers are afraid of these forests as well, or at least what lurks in them, because once night falls, a new creature awakens from the woods, the Creaking. The Creaking is a very intriguing mob, from its off-putting design to its unique behavior, using its wooden design to blend in with its biome, and as soon as you look away from its direction, it would begin making its way towards you to attack. Think of it as a reverse Enderman, but it's not only the player that has a unique interaction with the Creaking, but whenever villagers are near the Creaking, they'd run away from it, even though it doesn't really go after them. And what makes it even more strange is that the Creaking isn't actually hostile. Yes, it always targets the player, but with passive or hostile mobs, it still won't attack any of them. Even when facing the Snow Golem, Iron Golem, and Warden, the Creaking didn't attack first unless provoked. From it, we can conclude two very important things to note. One, the player has something that aggravates the Creaking. At first I thought it's another deal of an experiment gone wrong by the ancient builders. If that was the case, wouldn't the Creaking attack zombies as well, or mobs similar to the ancient builders? And two, the villagers might know something we don't about the Creaking, which makes some sense as both mobs live in identical biomes with opposite color schemes. It seems Mojang is trying to tell us that the Creaking and pillagers have something to do with one another. Similar biomes, identical color palette, unique behavior, but what's really impressive about the Creaking is that this isn't its main body. It's actually this, the Creaking's heart. Now when you summon a Creaking using its spawn egg and hit it, it dies instantly. But if one is spawned by the Creaking heart, you wouldn't be able to deal any damage to it at all. Even by using fire, it wouldn't die. with the only way to beat it is by breaking the heart, which is usually found deep inside pale oak trees. I also found out that newly grown pale trees won't grow with creaking hearts within them. I even grew multiple trees and waited during nighttime to see if anything would happen, but nothing. Not a single creaking had spawned. This means that the creaking heart isn't natural to the pale trees themselves. But what about the ones already in the pale forest? We'll get to that in a bit. Speaking of the creaking heart, its design is noteworthy, being encased inside a pale oak log from all sides, with its inside seemingly hollow. As you can see, it's not currently active. Only by placing it between two other pale logs would it start emitting an amber glow. This block placement seemed to suggest that the creaking heart forms a link with the pale trees themselves, like some sort of parasite. So let's say you encounter a creaking, located its heart, then broke it. Great, you've defeated a creaking. However, if you manage to get a glimpse at the creaking as it despawns, you would notice how it appears to be falling apart into smaller bits of wood and moss. This could only mean one thing. The creaking itself isn't its own separate entity, but rather a one that's controlled by the creaking heart, like some sort of hive mind. Like, come on, if the creaking was its own separate thinking organism, then the heart wouldn't really affect it or make it disassemble. This could also explain why it moves in such a sluggish motion. And after going through all of the things we do know about the creaking and the pale garden, I think I've figured out what we're dealing with here. The creaking is a fungus. Now, I believe you're rightfully confused as to how I came up with the creaking being a type of fungi. Well, believe it or not, but the creaking heart displays a bunch of behavior similar to real-life fungi. Some fungi can be found inside of trees, can cause a part of the trunk to become hollowed. There are also a few types of mushrooms, like
luminescent panellus,
that give off a greenish glow at night. Although not the same color, a proof of their bioluminescence nonetheless. And the similarities don't stop there. Fungal growth on trees have shown to increase nutrient intake for the trees through its roots, forming a type of symbiotic relationship, benefiting the tree and also the fungi. We already see it happening as the pale garden is considerably overgrown with vegetation. This explains why you'd find a large amount of moss growing below the pale tree's supposed roots, as more minerals will be located there in that case, helping the moss to grow. Okay, so the creaking is an invasive species of fungi that's benefiting from the pale garden and slowly killing it, right? But what about the creaking? Well, although I'm confident to say that the creaking is a fungi, I don't think it's doing any harm to the pale forest, since again, there wouldn't be much vegetation or trees if the creaking is dangerous to the environment. In fact, I think it's a simple case of the creaking using the biome and trees as shelter, while the creaking itself would be the fungi attempt at protecting itself. Now, I couldn't find a way to explain how would the creaking heart take control of a bunch of wood and moss to form a monster. So if you have any ideas, please do leave them in the comments below. But for the sake of simplicity, let's say just game logic for now. But from what is the creaking trying to protect the pale trees from? I mean, the place is eerily empty. Well, two candidates can come to mind, the player and illagers. The player is an obvious choice. I guarantee you have probably chopped down at least an entire ecosystem once before. Then you have the illagers, who have shown their heavy use of wood by their massive mansions. Not to mention that the pale garden and dark oak forest look identical in design. It donned the role of a monster, scaring away anyone who dares step foot onto its residence and chop down any of its trees, the thing they needed to survive. And it worked, demonstrated by the illagers not even wanting to be close to the creaking, even when it won't attack them. This also explains why it only targets the player, as we still try and get some of that pale wood for ourselves. But you wanna know what's annoying? While I was making this video, Mojang released a brand new preview for Bedrock Edition, adding the Eye Blossom flower and the new item, Resin, which you can get from the pale tree by Creaking's heart, basically saying that the orange glow from the Creaking's heart is actually resin. So does it disprove my theory? Well, dear viewer, it actually helps prove it. The eye blossoms are an easy case, as they could be native to the pale forest itself. Remember, we said that the pale garden is a native biome to the overworld, meaning it's natural to spawn there. Besides, when you bone meal the grass, it can appear, and some flowers have shown to be poisonous to both bees and humans' consumption, while the new resin item was a bit more challenging. Now, resin in real life is a sticky substance produced by trees. You might also recognize it once it hardens as amber, but in Minecraft, resin is quite different. The only way to get resin is by punching a creaking that's connected to a creaking's heart, and which would produce resin that you can use for other needs. But if the orange substance in the creaking heart is just resin, wouldn't that actually debunk my entire theory of creaking heart being a fungi? But resin actually helps support it even more. A study made by the Institute of Botany of the Polish Academy of Science, or PAS for short, have found a type of unique fungi in some resin samples, which is a very fascinating discovery as resin is considered to be a harsh environment for fungi to grow in due to its preserving behavior. This also explains why you can craft a creaking's heart using a resin's clump, as it could still contain the fungi of the creaking within it. And you want to know what's even crazy? The thing that really solidifies this idea entirely is the chiseled resin brick that has an image of a creaking encased by the other resin bricks, hinting to the living being inside this substance. And that was the creaking theory. So if you made it this far, I want to just say thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me that you guys find my videos entertaining enough to watch. I hope to continue on doing this while improving in the near future. But ever since I've uploaded my previous theory videos, I've seen many of you guys writing your own ideas and theories in the comments, which I did enjoy reading. So I'm happy to say that starting from now, if you have any theory that you'd like to share, leave it in the comments below and I might just pick it for a future theory video. As always, take care and stay safe.